Yes, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reality Bites interview podcast. Today, I have Daniel with me, and I'll get to his introduction in a bit. Let's talk about what this podcast is really about today. So, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has mounted grave allegations against India without a shred of demonstrable proof. He has claimed that India was behind the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Nijjar. Based on nothing but conjecture, Canada dismissed an Indian diplomat, and India, of course, calling the allegations absurd, reciprocated in kind. Now, there are certain elements to this geopolitical mess unleashed by Trudeau that deserve a mention. India has been raising the issue of Khalistan with Trudeau for a long time. Canada, on its part, has harbored, fed, and fattened these Khalistani terrorists who want to disintegrate India and openly declare and call for violence against Hindus. It is not just him, his father did the same. Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, shielded the Kanishka bombing mastermind, Talvinder Parmar. During the G20 summit, the Khalistani issue was raised by Prime Minister Modi. Modi conveyed that Khalistan fundamentalists are threatening the Indian community in Canada and their places of worship, encouraging secessionism, provoking violence against the Indian diplomats, and damaging diplomatic facilities. He also mentioned that a relationship based on mutual respect and trust is essential for the progress of India-Canada relationship. How did Trudeau build that mutual respect and trust, you ask? By pleasing elements like his NDP ally Jagmeet Singh, by pandering to those who want to tear India apart, by repeating the exact words of Sikhs for Justice chief Gurpatwant Pannu, repeating exactly what Pannu had said about India being involved in the killing of the Khalistani terrorists, and essentially pandering to those who unleash violence against India, Hindus, and everything that Bharat stands for. All of this while he snuggled behind the veil of freedom of expression, a freedom that he has no respect for as Canada becomes a totalitarian state with militarized wokeness and liberalism. He endorses gender politics and sexual exploitation of children, endorses, he escapes like a coward when and brutally crushes the farmers' protest in Canada itself while making statements about the trucker protest in Canada itself, while making statements about the farmer protests in India, and while ceding ground to China. China, as you know, is involved in espionage, disinformation campaigns, and electoral interference in Canada. For Trudeau, saying that an individual is either a girl or a boy, man or a woman, is a far greater crime than calling for the genocide of Hindus and planning violent separatism in India. Today, I interviewed Daniel Bordman. He is a senior correspondent and commentator for the National Telegraph in Canada. With Trudeau actively working towards the implosion of Canada, we talk today about his woke politics, the global left, the campaign against India, his affinity towards terrorists, and why Canada is being turned into a global joke by its Prime Minister. So, hello, Daniel. Welcome, and thank you so much for talking to us at such short notice.
No, I appreciate it. It's good to be here this morning. I didn't do my Canadian duty. I forgot my India costume in the other room, so I will not be doing blackface and dancing around this interview. Maybe next time.
Next time. I think we've had enough of Canadians wearing, treating India as a fancy dress competition for one lifetime.
Yeah.
With your Prime Minister.
Yeah, that was quite epic. Okay, so yeah, you hit on a lot of things. That was a good introduction. We went all the way back to the 80s to today. The thing you mentioned that I think is really important. We'll start here. This is sort of a great sort of like wokeness thing. There are two separate Canadian laws. Okay, there's the law for those who agree with the establishment. That is a first world country. If you vote liberal and you don't really get involved in too many controversial politics and all that, you have every right afforded to you in a first world country that you can think of, freedom of expression to the max. If you are opposing this Prime Minister, you do not have the same rights. It is not a first world country. The establishment is against you. So the example today, there's this big march we have today all across the country, the Million Man March, which is a protest against the gender ideology stuff. And a lot of the, organizers are Muslim. Just happens to be, it's all different races. But I bring this up to say, There's a poll just came out in Canada. About 80% of Canadians support the idea that parents should be informed of what their children are doing in schools and if they want to change their pronouns. 80%. Justin Trudeau has come out and said publicly, this is unacceptable, dangerous speech that needs to be stopped. So he is like, and they're trying to shut down these marches, like to go on the streets as parents and say, we want to be informed of what our kids doing in school. Unacceptable. Must be stopped. Zero tolerance for hate. Juxtapose that to all the Khalistani marches we've seen in the last months, which are kill, 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 kill. Kill India. Blood. Retribution. Pictures of the people we want to kill. Floats of Indira Gandhi getting assassinated. Kill, 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 kill. What does he do? When this is brought up to him by the Indian government, he says, well, we're a country of free speech and free expression, and we can't do anything. So, listen, I'm a free speech absolutist, as much as you can get, all right? I think you should be allowed in Canada, if you want, to get up and advocate for Khalistan. You want to say another country should separate? That's your right. I can say, I can get up and say, I want Brazil to be split into different provinces. The problem is, I cannot say, I want Brazil to be split into different provinces. Here's my AK-47, and I'm going to use guns to kill as many Brazilians as I can to separate Brazil, which is what Nijjar was doing in Canada, right? So, yes, India says he's a terrorist. We say he's just a regular Canadian citizen who just happened to tried to get in here in 1997 with a fake passport. That got denied. Tried to get in with a fake marriage. That got found out. Somehow got in, and he's here. He's grabbing AK-47s. He's India bad. And the Canadians are like, well, this is just Canadian values, I guess. Nothing to see here. And then, he dies. Is it an Indian government assassination, or is it the far more likely Khalistani gang violence, which is a rampant problem that, again, this is so Canadian. There's a problem with Khalistani gang violence. No one wants to talk about it. Just, okay, they'll live in Syria, they'll balkanize, we'll move out of the areas there, we'll just kind of ignore them and hope they stay to themselves. Obviously, the extremism metastasizes out of the little section you thought you had it cordoned in. So they tried to ignore it, and here we are. So yeah, we had Nijjar on video. So I mean, we could go back to it like, okay, is this an extrajudicial assassination of a terrorist or not? Like the whole thing is just a mess. But baseline Canada, I think we can just start. It's a country where you can advocate to kill as many Indians and Hindus as you want, publicly on TV, holding a gun. I'm literally. And this is absolutely fine because on whatever intersectional scale, the Khalistanis and the Islamists outrank Hindus. Like if I got on Canadian TV, if I got on the internet and made a video, if I grabbed a gun and just started, my name's Daniel Bordman and I support a separate Indian state. I want to kill 50,000 Hindus. Planes will fall from the sky. Basically doing the World Sikh Organization's greatest hits. If I just got up and a gun and did that, the country would be so excited. I would be in jail for 5,000 years. They might bring back the death penalty. Like the RCMP would be at my door, Trudeau would be making a speech, it would be all thing, but because there's no white people involved, right? No white victims, no white perpetrators. I guess it's not that sexy. And also most Canadians are just really, 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 really scared of having a somewhat controversial conversation in public. We want to stick our heads in the sand and pretend that America is the crazy one and we're the good brother that's well behaved. And this fantasy is I think poisoning a lot of Canadian institutions because the extremists are running amok through them, and when there's no bulwark to stop them.
So it's interesting you say this because when Mr. Trudeau came on the floor of your parliament and said that he suspected Indian agents were involved in the killing of Najaf, I'm curious. Any world leader, any leader of a nation would display some sort of evidence. So this has been going on for at least 3 months, where he claims that India is interfering in the internal affairs of Canada. And right after the G20 snub, he went back to Canada. He didn't get his fancy dress competition this time. He went back to Canada and made this charge. There was no evidence which was presented. Not even a shred of evidence. The world is simply supposed to believe that, all right, this is what Trudeau is saying, and he wouldn't lie because he's a great guy who believes in gender identity. And therefore, we should simply take his word for it and skewer India for it. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Any leader would think that this would go against him and his country. Any leader would know that the world is not going to fall over each other to support his stand. What drove Justin Trudeau to create this sort of international diplomatic
No, you
storm
made a mistake.
without any evidence
No,
whatsoever? Yeah.
no, this is bad. India, stop. Don't ever try and understand Justin Trudeau. You can't do it. You're going to go insane. Okay? If you want to, why would Justin Trudeau do this? You're going to go crazy. Okay? Just, watch it. Okay? This is my advice to Indians who are getting mad here in geopolitics. Canada, just understand Canada isn't real. It's not a real place. It's not a real country. It's just a TV show. Just look at Canada as a TV show and Justin Trudeau as a character. Okay? Why is he doing what he's doing? Who knows? What do the writers do this week? Just be like, next time he's in Parliament talking about India, just be like, oh, good, this week's episode of Canada is on. What's going to happen? Oh, Justin Trudeau got divorced from his wife. Which cabinet minister is going to date now? Is it going to be a man? Is it going to be a woman? Who knows? Spoiler alert, it's trans. Wow. Okay, Canada, silly, right? If you get too involved, you're going to go crazy, right? Leave Canada for, it's my problem, right? I have to deal with it. You guys just ignore. So we have to go through this whole, every part of this is just an absolute catastrophe. So you talked about for months that he's been harping on the Indian foreign interference thing. So I'll explain. What's really going on in Canada from the Canadian perspective, this is a story of Pakistani foreign interference, framed as a story about as Indian interference, when the real story in Canada is Chinese interference. So this is what the Khalistani movement was, we all know it's funded by Pakistan, especially in Canada. There are stories of Khalistani-aligned politicians just walking to the Pakistani embassy, coming out with envelopes of cash and names, and you could sign up people in the day back in cash. Wild West type stuff. Okay. So that's the base of this. And we have, these Khalistanis there. And so just Justin Trudeau, he was dealing with Chinese foreign interference. And him and Jagmeet were trying to frame it as, lots of countries are foreign interfering, India, because they have anti-Indian bias. They're lefties. The new left doesn't like India. It's the new Israel. Jagmeet's a full-on Khalistani. Okay, so they were using India always to distract from the China thing. And then, Nijjar's death, it sort of pick this up. But let's sort of go over let's try and be reasonable, something that doesn't come often in Canada. But let's think this one through from a Canadian perspective. And so I'll talk to my Canadians here. Okay, so we're going to claim that the Indian government assassinated Hardeep Nijjar. Okay, so that's our claim. In order to prove this, you're right, we're going to need evidence in international state. That's vital. Like this trust me bro attitude from Justin Trudeau is not going to work. But okay, what do we have from the Indian government? We have basically proven motive and opportunity. Okay, motive in the sense that, okay, this guy, they say he's a terrorist, he's a hardcore Khalistani, he's advocating for separatism. Here he is on a video going, India bad. Now, okay, you could say this is motive for the Indian government to kill him, and maybe it is. But also, isn't this a stunning indictment of Canadian society that how did this guy get in, right? Like, why didn't we do anything? So this is also Canadian skill. If you want to say India did this and say, here's the motive and explain the motive. Well, Khalistani extremism. Well, why are we tolerating Khalistani extremism? How did this guy get in? How did he rise to prominence? Why is he on TV shooting guns and yelling about India? That's another thing. So then the opportunity is, well, they're the Indian government. They have all these resources, the billions of people, billions of dollars. They could pay an assassin. It could be Indian intelligence taking him out. Okay, plausible, right? The Indian government does have the capability to kill one person. Most governments do. Okay, so we have opportunity motive. But the other thing is you have to get in is like, okay, so we have nothing else. We don't have the smoking gun. We don't have any public link. Trudeau's claiming we do, but he's made stuff up before. If you want to take sort of the Occam's razor approach and you go into, okay, the motive is to get rid of this terrorist. What is the utility, though, to the Indian government of killing Nijjar in Canada? Like, what's the utility here? Was the Khalistani state about to break off tomorrow, and the only thing that could keep the Punjab region together was killing this guy in Canada, and therefore they had to take the risk to just kill him in broad daylight, just gun him down in a gang-style shooting outside his temple, instead of if you're the Indian government, you have $1 billion, what break into his house, make it look like a home invasion. Like there's better ways to commit a clandestine assassination than this. And again, like, what does India benefit off of this assassination versus what they gain to lose by planning an assassination in Canada? Like, I just don't believe, as someone who's followed this issue and issues surrounding it for years and seen the pattern, especially in the last few months, and I just don't believe the government's story. And I try to raise the alarm. He's like, yeah, I'm pro-Canada, but you hit on the point. Like, we're starting a fight with an ally. This is insane. This is absolute insane behavior. I think about Justin Trudeau, and in order to, I just start smacking my head against the wall to save myself. The brain damage of think it's better to do head on wall than think like Trudeau. So you have this insane scenario where we're starting a fight with our allies, who shares allies. So they're the allies we share, America, Italy, Europe, South, whatever, are going to come and say, well, okay, so India's the bad guys. They're undermining our sovereignty. Okay, so we should cut ties with the billion people who are the only possible hedge we have against China. Why? And Trudeau's going with, trust me, bro, I saw a thing in our intelligence which has been very poor in the last few years under me and ideologically corrupted, and has a history of lying to protect me. Certain people have come in, and there's been whistleblowers of the intelligence. But our intelligence community, which is an absolute mess, and the Canadians don't trust right now because of the foreign interference scandal from China that we're trying to ignore, he's coming in and saying, okay, we're starting this fight, and you're just going to have to trust me, America. Stop trading with India because I feel like it. And it's insane. And he had to know that if you're going to kick out an Indian diplomat, you got to have a document ready to go, like smoking gun. You got to have a smoking gun for people to back you. And like, so you want the world to get in an uproar over the guy, again, on TV with the AK-47, right? If it was little Priya, who was like an 11-year-old girl who was in like a Khalistan dress, twirling around in BC, and then she died, and like maybe the world would have sympathy because she's an innocent little girl. What did her father do? It doesn't matter. But no, this is like a literal India bad guy. So is the world going to be like, oh no, we lost Hardeep Nijjar. Who's going to advocate for Khalistan and killing all the Hindus now? Right? So what are they thinking? And the answer is they're not thinking. And if you're trying to understand Canada, you have to stop thinking too. That's the way it is.
I'm so busy laughing that you've made me forget half my questions. But you're right, there is a China problem that Canada has. There is a problem of espionage. There's a problem of your academic institutions being infiltrated by China. There was news that there are even Chinese police stations in Canada.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like not just the Canadian media, but the Canadian government seems to have summarily ignored the Chinese interference problem. They have simply used India as a diversion, as you said. But what is the common Canadian's perspective vis-a-vis what China is doing and what India is? Because what I find is that generally, as far as the Western countries are concerned, Canada, US, Europe to a large extent, their understanding of the nuances and the amalgamation of cultures and nuance that is India is sorely missing. So if you're going to say that there are a group of people who are a quote unquote minority in India and who are being persecuted by the government, sans fact, is the government simply assuming that the Canadian people are going to trust him because their awareness about the Indian nuances, they're so minimum?
Well, this is, there's a lot of hubris going on here. So you have to understand how the Canadian media landscape, like I'm independent online journalism, National Telegraph is not government funded, but every major Canadian news network now, every mainstream outlet, every newspaper, everything on TV standard is government funded. All of it, to the tunes of hundreds of millions, now billions of dollars. Trudeau's bought the media. So they leaned left before, and now they're sort of bought and paid for. You saw what happened when even the Globe and Mail stepped out of line, started reporting the China stuff. All the other media started attacking the journalist who was doing the whistleblower stuff. So Canadian media is terrible. It is government friendly. The CBC, the government thing. There's a journalist, Rupa Sablahara. She's great. Hundreds of thousands of followers. One of the biggest thing from India originally, understands it. She did put a tweet, like she was asked to come on CBC to do a thing, and they did a pre-interview. And she basically explained the Indian government's point of view. And they're like, oh yeah, we're not interested in this. And they put on a bunch of Khalistanis and leftists. because like the thing they want to talk about in Canada, it's like the Muslim Brotherhood playbook. We want to talk about, is there a fear of backlash against the Sikh community? That's the narrative we want to go, right? So it's like, remember when 9/11 happened or any Islamic terrorist attack? What's Barack Obama's number one priority? What's Congress, Justin Trudeau? We need to make sure there's no backlash against the Muslim community. Well, how about the victims of the explosion there? And this is sort of what we have in Canada here, where you have Sikh leaders on the TV going, kill, 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 kill. And we're worried about the backlash. And by backlash, they mean people like me going on shows like this saying, you know what, killing Hindus is actually bad and you shouldn't do it. Hard no to the kill, kill, kill. This is the backlash that they're afraid of. So this is the number one problem and priority of the CBC right now and Trudeau. So I think he feels like he can get away with it because the only criticism he comes from is online media. With the new bill, I'm not sure if you heard, Bill C-18, Canada's a disaster. We can't do news on Facebook. We can't do news on Google. So our news organization's like, what are we doing? You got to go on YouTube and Twitter now. So they're trying to destroy all online media or any unfriendly dissent, and they've sort of bought and paid for it. So I think he has the hubris to know that if he goes on and does this, mainstream Canadian television is not going to give you an understanding of this conflict. And Canadians want to understand India. All right, Canadians want to understand the world. Canadians want to be seen as worldly. Canadians love the whole, when we go traveling, or when Americans go traveling, they put a Canadian flag on their backpack because everyone loves Canada. And we want to be nice to everyone and all this. But I think the problem is it's just surface level politeness. And if you really want to get to know someone or get to know a country, you got to go a bit deeper than that. And that's where a lot of Canadians aren't willing to go. We just want to say, oh, India. And you know what? The British Empire was bad for all of you. It was the whites versus the browns, right? And all of India is just, maybe they know they have hundreds of different languages and all this, but the average Canadian, you start saying Khalistani separatism, you talk about India-Pakistan wars, what happened in Bangladesh in the 70s, they get scared and they don't want to be having the conversation in public. You can maybe have it with them in private, but the majority of Canadians, the elites, the upper middle class, the whatever you want to call it, the urbanized people, they want their heads in the sand. They want a nice, warm hole in the beach to stick their head in the sand forever, pretend that America is the crazy one, and not have anything go. So a lot of Canadians are sort of confused what's happening right now, and they don't like it. They don't understand it. They're sort of looking around for what's going on. They're being fed just tidbits from CBC. Oh, and they're treating it as truth, right? Trudeau accuses bombshell allegation against Indian government. They're kind of taking it, India does this, but there's no background, there's no context, there's no explanation of the Khalistani movement. There's no, hey, India says he's a terrorist. This is why. Is there something here? So it's again, and mainstream media, how in North America works. It's here, let's have a 7-minute segment, put 4 people in this panel, all to say nothing, right? So no one can say anything of value. And then next, let's talk about, diversity or whatever. So the average Canadian is probably so ignorant of what's going on right now, so confused. They want to do better. They want good relations with India. No one has any animosity towards India unless they're like a Pakistani hired activist or whatever, or, one of those radical leftists who, again, that's their job to hate India. But the majority of Canadians, I think, are just sort of dumbstruck right now, wondering like what's going on, foreign interference. And some of the dumber ones are like, foreign interference, oh, we're good, we're fighting it because it's being phrased, oh, Canada's fighting foreign interference. Okay, good, we're fighting interference now, and using this as to, well, now the Conservatives don't care about foreign interference. So there's some internal wedge politics being played right now by the Liberals. It's a very, very cynical, and I think malicious, or I don't know the word for it. I do see it as a cynical and maybe Machiavellian and selfish ploy by Trudeau. Like I wouldn't put it past him to do all this because I think he just thinks he can get away with it internally. Internationally, this doesn't end well for Canada. There's no, because again, Modi isn't getting his news from Rosemary Barden of the CBC. All right, this is not where, and no serious world leader is watching the CBC saying, okay, this is what's actually going on in the world. They have intelligence reports. They have people they trust. They know that 2 + 2 is 4, and people who say kill, kill, kill might want to kill you. But other than me, my colleague Wyatt Claypool, Terry Molaski, going on with Spencer Fernando today to talk about it. But there's I'll say there's 10 journalists you can find in all of Canada who can even tell you what the Khalistani movement is even about. And then that's who has the balls to talk about it. That's another level. So you're dealing with single digit people in the country who have an actual understanding and an ability to articulate what's going on here. So it's prognosis, not great for India-Canada relations in the near future.
So I think Jagmeet Singh also plays a major role in how Trudeau is choosing to engage with India. Now, Jagmeet Singh, I believe, is an ally of Trudeau, but I have seen him attack Trudeau on multiple occasions as far as his other policies are concerned. However, the moment Trudeau starts making noise against India or pro-Khalistani noises, Jagmeet Singh's support goes entirely to Trudeau. So how much does his alliance with NDP, with Jagmeet Singh, his, of course, open support to Khalistanis, open support to the genocide of Hindus, and open support to secessionism in India, how much does that shape what Trudeau is saying, disregarding how it plays out for Canada? Because given the current situation, given how G20 went, between India and Canada, the world community, and tell me if you agree with me, is likely to take India's word for it than Trudeau's. I don't think Trudeau is taken as seriously by the world community currently. So how much does Jagmeet Singh sort of craft what Trudeau is saying about India?
All right, so I think there's two questions here. Yeah, okay. I would say it's not so much about who does the world believe. That's not really how geopolitics. It's might makes right a lot of times geopolitics. So who has more leverage? And India just has vastly more leverage than Canada. So you need some pretty startling evidence publicly to make people shift. So even if people believe Justin Trudeau, if the evidence isn't public to convince their own people, they're not going to turn down billions of dollars in trade just because a terrorist got killed in Canada. No, like times are tough. People are struggling. Inflation, food prices. Like no one's joining Justin Trudeau's crusade of foolishness, unless there's such a smoking gun that it's just undeniable that Modi and government officials had an active hand, and there's a wire transfer to assassin McKillkill. But that. Okay, so how much influence does Jagmeet Singh have? Let me explain sort of how Canada Parliament works right now to India. So it's a parliamentary system, first past the post, 338 seats. You have over half, you have a majority, you're the ruling party. You have under half, which is what it is right now. It's a minority government. So they've sort of formed a coalition in everything but name with the NDP, the third party, run by Jagmeet Singh. So in order to get over half, the Liberals and the NDP have formed an effective coalition. And Jagmeet's a hardcore Khalistani, right? He's banned from India. We saw the San Francisco speech for Khalistan. He's met with Khalistani extremists. It took him 3 tries to say the Air India bombing was an act of terrorism and not committed by the Indian government. 3 tries. He got there, though. Good for him. So how much influence does he have? It's going to be hard to say. I don't think he's crafting Justin Trudeau's statement. But the answer is not zero, because the NDP is sort of propping up the government. This is a Jagmeet thing. Jagmeet Singh's going so hard right now. He's calling for this and more investigations, and Modi, he's jumped the gun. Jagmeet's concluded the investigation. Jagmeet's found who's guilty. Jagmeet's going to India. He's flying over with handcuffs. He's bringing Modi back to jail. Like, that's where Jagmeet's head's at. He's like, I'm flying to India. I'm arresting everyone. It's over. Trudeau, I mean, there's very few people who can make Justin Trudeau look reasonable by comparison, but Jagmeet's one of them. And so how much does this push? You're right. There's a hardcore Khalistani element in the Liberal Party and the NDP, and in the left. There's many Liberal cabinet ministers, former cabinet ministers, hardcore ties to the Khalistanis. Our former defense minister, one of your colonels, who was a Sikh guy as well. So I'm not meeting with this guy. He's a terrorist. No, he supports and these are Sikhs in India being like, no, Canadians, no, they support Khalistani. So this is just the level of insanity we're dealing with. So can I put a number on it? No. I would say more than 0, less than 50 is definitely the range there of how much influence Jagmeet has. I don't think he's He's driving force here. I think Trudeau's still in the driver's seat, and that makes sense. But it's not zero, because he is in a coalition, and they sort of have entered in this Faustian bargain, Justin and Jagmeet, to get themselves to 2025. Jagmeet gets his pension, Trudeau stays in power, gets more money, and gets to do whatever he wants. He gets full immunity from all the scandals. So Justin and Jagmeet sort of destroyed their own parties to prop up their own political careers, which is why I wouldn't put it past them to, destroy the country's reputation to help out their personal finances and political career. So I've seen these men destroy things that are supposed to be dear to them for personal gain, and now we're in this situation. So I could give you 5,000 reasons, and we'll do the whole hour and a half of reasons just why I don't trust Trudeau, why I think the story is going to blow up in Canada's face, and I think maybe articulate to some Canadians, why is India so mad at us? And hopefully Indians, can you be less mad at us? It's just, we got two crazy ding dongs. Everyone else is confused. Just ignore it. Just remember, Canada's not real. It's a TV show. Weed is legal here. Just pretend we're all high. Maybe you should get high. Maybe that's the solution to Canada, is legalize weed in India. That way, whenever, Canada comes on TV, you could all just get high and then watch Justin Trudeau say silly things and then not take it too seriously. Because if you try to, it's going to go.
I think most of India stopped, except the liberals and the leftists, but most of sane India stopped taking Trudeau seriously when he came here, wore a hideous kurta and started dancing. I think that's the moment collectively Indians with an IQ higher than 50 decided to not trust him. And I think this incident sort of reinforces that notion that he's not trustworthy. Now, as you said, I was watching one of your India Today interviews, the tweet that I actually responded to and got in touch with you for. You scandalized our mainstream media, and I think you gave him a mini sort of cardiac arrest. He probably went home and had a peg of scotch to calm his nerves. But I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I absolutely loved it. But you said something really interesting there. You said that there are elements in the government, officials, not elected representatives necessarily, but officials, who do believe in these Khalistani conspiracy theories, like India downed the Kanishka plane, the air bombing was India's doing, and it wasn't the Khalistanis.
Thing. I know of one active now. I'm not going to say because Canada's. I mean, I'll just get into too much trouble but I do know of there's a high-ranking minister in Trudeau's government who's very close to Justin Trudeau. He's not Sikh. He's not Khalistani. I won't say his whatever, but his chief of staff. I know I was having drinks with friends of his from university, and we were just talking. He's like, yeah, this is before this stuff. He's an Air Indian denier. And he was telling me these guys just they actively don't and this isn't the first story I've heard like this. I've heard there's many people in the liberal hardcore party, and again, not elected, but staffers, down, they filled out, there's some Khalistanis that are chiefs of staff and in there. And you listen to these guys and you hear these guys just don't believe the Air India bombing was done by a terrorist group. They believe it was done by the Indian government. I think I said, I'm not sure if I said it there. I said it yesterday. I said it somewhere. The Khalistani conspiracies are insane. Okay. And they never there's this hypothetical situation where there's a Sikh man in Toronto, Canada, at the age of 474 years old. He's 474. He's in hospital on his deathbed after living a 400-plus year life, surrounded by his entire family. And as he dies in a peaceful soliloquy, 5 minutes later, you'll get a Khalistani account on Twitter saying, whatever was assassinated by the Indian government, 500 retweets. 500 retweets. This guy was anyone who dies anywhere in the world, you'll find a Khalistani, the Indian government did this, right? And then maybe a Palestinian jumps in, no, it was Israel, right? And this is the level of discourse between the Khalistanis and their friends. So I make this point to say, if there's someone in the Canadian RCMP, we're having reports that there's links to the Indian government, I would bet my life with 99% certainty that there are a bunch of lunatic Khalistanis feeding the RCMP wacky conspiracy theories and sending all this bullshit. I get it too, right? Whenever I say something about India, in my DMs, there's a Khalistani, this is going crazy. So do I trust the Canadian intelligence agencies to cipher through all of this? Is there one Khalistani who got into the RCMP or CSIS with sympathies and pushed us to the top, right? Like, so when it comes to a single report, I know for a near fact that Khalistanis are messaging crazy, and this is part of your job. Like, yeah, but do we believe that there's hard evidence, in this that is coming from a credible source? I just don't see it, because I also know what these guys are getting messaged, because I get messaged it too. And all it takes is one dum-dum in the intelligence agency or one bad actor to sort of push us to the top. And I wouldn't put it past Justin Trudeau to cherry pick from a list of 100, yeah, India probably had nothing to do with this, no, to I think India might have something to do with it. Boom, I have one report in front of all this other countervailing evidence. I'm going to take this to smack India with. Like, that would not surprise me if that's the case. Like, this is my Occam's razor scenario here.
So, last question about this before we move on to his woke politics. Why do you think Justin Trudeau or the government is not doing, or the intelligence agencies for that matter, they're not doing the same, or at least some degree of investigation into Chinese interference? Because it's far more severe. There's hard evidence of Chinese interference in the Canadian democracy, in internal working of Canada. And we haven't seen Trudeau really make a statement about Chinese interference. We haven't seen the intelligence agencies make comments about the Chinese intelligence. There has hardly been any pushback.
Try to. We've seen the intelligence agencies have been trying to leak the Chinese stuff, but the Trudeau government tries to shut it down, and then they bring on a sycophant to say all fake. So listen, this is a question of wokeness. Yeah. This is people I agree with. The Chinese government, when Justin Trudeau ran for Prime Minister in 2015, asked what country he admires the most. He said the basic dictatorship of China because of green energy nonsense that doesn't even make sense. But so he admires Chinese basic dictatorship. The Chinese support him. The Chinese threaten and harass his opponents. So China good. China bad for Canada. China good for Trudeau. China good. Right? Then you have India, which is not nice to Trudeau. They criticize him. So India bad. Even though India good, Indian government mean to Trudeau, therefore India bad. This is the logic. I can't see anything else making sense. It's totally the Trudeau government on foreign policy. It's, their big foreign policy thing back in 2015 to Canada was like increasing ties with Iran and the Islamic Republic. And they're the ones who kidnap and murder our citizens for fun. And Trudeau loves them, but they hate us. So Trudeau loves them more because they like him, because he hates us. So this is sort of wokeism, radical leftism, intersectionality, whatever you want to call it. This is that run amok on a geopolitical scale. And the adults in the room, the foreign policy wonks, the people in suits were supposed to be above this. This was supposed to be a fringe academic nonsense thing that your 16-year-old daughter might get a hold of and grow out of in a fake. No, this is the government of Canada. And this is a major world leader just going full on gender studies on an international scale.
So I really find this interesting. He has clamped down on the freedom of the press because he is, as you said, bought off most of mainstream media in Canada. He has clamped down on journalists, independent journalists, using alternate tools and methods to disseminate information. He's cracked down on Google, he's cracked down on Facebook, so on and so forth. He crushed the truckers' protest. In fact, he almost fled when the truckers' protest was happening. Everything that Trudeau does. Sorry?
Oh, he did flee. Oh, no, sorry. He got COVID and had to go away. Got COVID for the third time in like a month.
He just magically got COVID exactly to coincide with the truckers' protest.
I mean, his COVID's really nice.
Brilliant.
Justin Trudeau's caught COVID 3 times at the politically perfect opportunity to avoid a scandal. So this is the way COVID works in Canada is pretty interesting. And the second you're in trouble with the international community, or your polling numbers go down, you catch COVID. So watch out for that. If you're in Canada, keep your polling numbers high, or else you might catch a cold.
Or maybe that's why he's friends with China. Who knows? Sends him over some COVID whenever he needs it. But my question was, everything that he does, all his policies are against so-called espoused principles of liberalism. He talks about freedom of speech, but doesn't grant freedom of speech to his own citizens who might be dissidents. He talks about the right to protest in India, but he clamps down on a protest which is happening within his own country, where only the alternate media seem to have covered it extensively. I mean, the truckers' protest. Um, so, how do you explain him being looked upon as one of the liberal leaders, quote unquote, when most of his policies are almost authoritarian and almost totalitarian in nature?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. I think it was one of the questions of our time, and this is maybe the tagline of how the left killed liberalism. That might be the tagline in the last decade. Listen, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding, maybe in the West, might bleed into India too. I can speak better North America. There's a conflation now between liberalism and leftism and what is to be left. So you have these sort of progressive intersectional circle, which is the new frontier of the left, but it's philosophically very anti-liberal, right? Liberalism is you do what you want, I do what I want, let's leave us alone. Like classical liberalism, economic liberty, like lower taxes, you have the right to do with your money, people have the right to do what they want, you're brown, I'm white, he's black, everyone has rights, you're gay, I'm straight, marry whoever you want, liberalism, right? And that's philosophical liberalism. But we've gotten to the point where it's gone so far, and the academic world, I think, is gone so toxic, where we now have this intersectionality, which is this is the new liberalism. But this doesn't break down very well because liberalism is right to peace, safety, and security. But when you break it down into we take very simple. We go like, okay, whites oppress blacks, and whites oppress these minorities, and these people oppress these people. But then when you get into brown or Indian or any category really, it breaks down into subcategories because people are different. They get different religions. The intersectionality says, oh, we have to take all these different things into account and give you a different point score on all this. But this is not liberalism, right? Liberalism is the individual, right? And if you want to, my frustration again with the intersectionality on the left is if you break down the logic of intersectionality, it all gets down to the individual because, right, if you want to give everyone all these different tags and whatever, no one's going to have the same million tags as you. So everyone comes down to the individual, but they don't do it. They keep it at like the main surface level things. This is how we divide. So we look at people on race, we judge people on color, and then when it gets into issues like this India thing and the Khalistanis versus the Hindus, well, in Canada, they're both brown. So a lot of left-wing Canadians don't know what to think because this intersectionality is a valuable heuristic because a lot of people in Canada say, oh, white, black, good, bad, or bad, good, like whatever type of racist you are these days. But when it's like brown, it's like, oh my God. But then you have a breakdown of liberalism because you literally, again, have people on TV with the gun saying, kill, 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 planes drawing from the sky, 50,000 Hindus. And again, if it was a white person saying this, we could arrest them and stop them from killing Hindus, which again, I've had this very long-standing anti-genocide of Hindu stance. Call me crazy, but I've been bucking the Canadian trend. I disagree. But the liberals, they don't want to deal with it because they're too afraid to stand up for minorities within minorities because they don't want the backlash. They don't want to say something controversial because they don't want a look at a dinner party. If you're at a dinner party and someone's wife thought you were too controversial, 50 years in jail. I mean, oh my, world ending. If someone's acquaintance thinks you were a bit too spicy on the CBC, world. I joke, but this is not so far off. So, I mean, I'm half going insane spending the last 2 days just trying to explain how Canada functions to the rest of the world. But I think future. I think that's is that CNN. I can't remember which Indian TV. I'm on every Indian TV network imaginable today. Going again. I'm insane. I forgot the question. Something. Trudeau, Prime Minister for life.
Yes. No. So the question was, he stands. His policies are everything that liberalism is supposedly. He pretends to espouse liberal principles, but his policies are anything but liberal. They're almost authoritarian and totalitarian in nature. So, but what you said is quite interesting. You spoke about intersectionality. And you said that the leftists get a little confused when it's brown versus brown, because when it's white versus black, it's easier to make that distinction and decide who the victim is. So what you're saying is that they're too scared to speak against a minority within a minority, which is Sikhs, who are a minority in a Hindu majority area. And therefore, even if they're calling for the genocide of Hindus, they feel obligated to support them because they don't want to appear too controversial.
I mean, that's Canada in a nutshell. It's avoiding controversy, head in the sand, want to pretend that we're the most peaceful country on earth. What Canadians love, what do Canadians want? What does the establishment Canadians want? What do the lawyers on Bay Street, the nice suburban housewives want from Canada? They want to see a poll done by some international NGO that doesn't matter, with hundreds of thousands of followers, that does some internet survey to find out the best countries to live in the world, and to say, look, Canada is the number 3 country to live in the world, right behind Norway and Sweden. Yay, everything's fine. This is what we want. The country could literally be on fire. There could be rampaging, orcs coming out of Lord of the Rings through a time shift, aliens blowing up the CN Tower. And as long as there's a poll saying that everything's fine by an NGO somewhere in Norway, we're killing it. Canada's doing great. So this is the mentality you're kind of dealing with in Canada. It's we don't want to be seen as too rowdy. We want to be seen as the reasonable cousin, little brother to America. America's so crazy. Oh, isn't Donald Trump crazy? Good thing we don't have a Donald Trump. And Canadians don't like it when we have a ding-dong dressing up in a thing in blackface, because we want to pretend that we're so sophisticated. So they don't like that Trudeau embarrasses us. They want him to sort of not embarrass us. And I think this will hurt him in the long run because, he's not, Canadians want to be that friendly, peaceful, like we have a lot of great foreign policy history. The Suez Canal crisis was negotiated by Lester B. Pearson. They formed the functional UN peacekeeping force that avoided a potential world escalation of World War III in 1955. Lebanon, the peacekeeping missions there. Again, there's so much great Canadian foreign policy history that when it comes to the history books and Justin Trudeau, this is going to be a massive stain. And I think that will resonate eventually. It takes a while for Canadians to understand something, for things to get through, for the truth to get through, for critical mass to hit, for enough of people talking like me to break through to the masses and kind of explain what's going on. But I do see this blowing up in Trudeau's face. The problem is we got to wait till 2025 to just get him out of all of our lives.
So when I hear you, what I'm processing is that Canada wants to become like Switzerland, but their prime minister is forcing it to become like Pakistan by harboring terrorists.
Yeah, Pakistan Junior.
I think that, Pakistan Juniors. I think that would explain to the Indian audience what you were saying. He wanted to make Canada into Switzerland, or at least Canadians want Canada to be Switzerland.
Yeah.
But their prime minister is making it Pakistan Junior. So that's an interesting comment. And now we come to the part where we can talk about this interesting observation you made about the global left community targeting India because of their intersectioning notions about what India is, what India should be, etc. So what did you mean by the global left attacking India and going after India?
Yeah, Rashab didn't give me much time to elaborate on that point. I think we can all tell.
Wait, before we get into that, what did you think of that interview? What did you think of it?
So
why do you think you were cut short?
So this is for all the behind the scenes guys. Like, how did I end up on the most woke show on India TV? So you might know, if I was like tweeting stuff like a couple nights ago. I started it. I was like, this is stupid. I got retweeted by some BJP people in India. When India saw what I had to say, they liked it. Then I got up in the morning because I was so frustrated with the government. I grabbed a coffee and I just like made a video of 15 minutes being like, this. It was good times. You can find it on my anywhere. Then I'm getting all these requests. I'm like in a Twitter space with different people, like making connections, talking to people like you, booking podcasts. And then someone comes in the DMs like, oh, I'm for producer for India TV. Want to do it? Sure, I'll go on India TV. And then we're connecting on WhatsApp. And then like half an hour before or whatever, he's like, you're going to be on with this host. And like, I know Indian politics, but I don't know all the hosts on Indian television. I know none of it. Like, again, I think that's a reasonable ask from me. Like, the random Canadian guy's not going to know everyone's politics in Indian TV. But I go on, I'm like doing the thing, and like, okay, I got to sign out from this, or come on. And I didn't know his views, but then like the segment before is like this gender studies thing. I'm like, oh, that's sad. And then I get put on with like the former ambassador to Iran, who's like, is terrorism even that bad? I'm like, what's going on here? And then I'm like, should I just like play along, or should I go full Daniel mode and just rip it? And I'm like, all right, let's just go full like, all right, Khalistani, Canada, choose an idiot, jag me there, like, and and then he's like, he like cut me off. He's like, oh no. Right, let's cut down. So what the point I was making about the global left, let me elaborate on this. So on that point, I talked about Justin Trudeau's motivations also do come from the fact that he's an ideological leftist. Okay, he does believe this. He's getting high in his own supply on the intersectionality front. Listen, does he practice what he preached? No, he'll grope women, put on blackface, throw women under the bus. He's fine with people who sexually assault women as long as they're part of his caucus and give him money. So hypocrisy there. But he believes what he preaches. He doesn't practice it. He wants you to practice it. So he's a true believer in all this intersectionality stuff. And if you look at the rise in anti-Indian sentiment within the universities, it's growing rapidly. I mean, I first went a bit viral in India when the Article 370 stuff happened. And I was watching it and going, okay, wait a minute. Like, to me, I'm like pretty Jewish, if we found, like, I'm pro-Israel. I'm a Zionist. I'm not like crazy, but I listen to the anti-India stuff in 370. I'm like, this is Palestinians. Like, I'm like, this is a Palestine. Like, I know terribly worded, thought out Islamist rhetoric when I hear it. So I'm like, I know when someone's lying. All the worst people in the world are yelling at India right now. Let's figure what's going on here. And the more you get into it, you see like the links between, you have the Pakistani funded, like Jamaat-e-Islami, the Southeast Asian version of the Muslim Brotherhood. They fund through here. You have the Khalistanis, the Muslim Brotherhood, it's the CCP. You have all these bad actors who have learned to infiltrate through the progressive left, because the progressive left can be shut down with claims of racism. They also love this narrative that America and the West are these imperial forces that are driving colonialism. This works great for the Islamists, because then they could say, 9/11, that wasn't about Islamic extremism at all. It was about racism instead. And we had, right? The Air India bombing, that wasn't about whatever. It was just about Sikh discrimination instead, right? So you have this anti-India stuff, because for better or worse, the way the politics is so divided, it's kind of like the left is like Palestine good, Israel bad. The right sort of Israel good, Palestine bad. There's now a version of that which is left is Pakistan good, India bad, and the vice versa, and maybe not so much the vice versa on the right, because the right isn't really paying attention to this anymore. But certainly among the left there is a anti-colonial right. It's a very simple thing, right? This intersectionality. There's people who oppress and there's oppressors, and the reason you are oppressed is because of the oppressor. So if it runs on a faulty logic that the world's a zero-sum game, meaning if you make $10,000 today, that's coming out of my money. Like I could be making that. Like you should only make 5,000, I should make 5. Like that's kind of like there's a fixed sum. So when they see, oh, Israel has more money than Palestinians, the Palestinians are poor because the Israelis are rich. Oh, India's doing better than Pakistan. Pakistan's flooded. India's doing better than Pakistan because India's oppressing Pakistan. And this is sort of how this is high level university thinking. You have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to think thoughts this stupid. But you can in Canada. You can pay, and Indian students do come and pay and learn to be this stupid. I'm sorry, you're getting screwed over. But this is Canadian universities, and this I think is manifesting and is metastasizing, gone all the way up out of the universities into the establishment and into the Liberal Party. So I was making the case that, listen, I know people downrank in the Liberal Party, and I know people on the left. India's not popular on the left. India, bad boy. Modi is very bad in the left. He's the new sort of, dictator, democratically elected dictator, the new democratically elected dictator that we all have to worry about, who's holding another election later, as most dictators do. So this is sort of the new thing. Modi. So I was making the point that thinking, multiplied by the fact that we do know there's hardcore Khalistanis in the Liberals and NDP. I mean, he's in a coalition with one of them. So I just made the point, like all these influences are pushing to come back against India, because you're seeing it manifest in both the political class and the media class have sort of come out of these institutions that have been corrupted by far left ideology. And, you know, spoiler alert for India, you're not one of the good guys to the radical left. You're on this side of the spectrum. Like, yes, let me do Indian history 101 from a Canadian university perspective, or maybe an Indian university perspective. India was founded by the Mughal Empire, who were very nice, and then the British came and colonized it, and it was horrible. And every problem India has is because of colonialism from the British Empire, not the Mughal Empire. History. Am I wrong on, can I teach a PhD level history course in your country now?
Absolutely. In fact, if you had said that on India Today, you would have been given 15 bonus minutes.
Oh, I'd be still talking right now. And
absolutely, you would have been given more time. I think you would have been Rajdeep's favorite panelist had you said that. And that is the thing. So I like what you said, how you explained intersectionality and how the left thinks Pakistan good, India bad. I also think that as far as you made this connection between Jews, Israel, India, Hindus, and Palestine, Pakistan, which is interesting because I feel like the left and the woke, alliance seems to take the Islamists and the terrorists and the Khalistani seriously, because they scream louder about their victimhood, imagined victimhood. And unless they take them seriously, they run the risk of them taking to the streets and committing violence. And therefore, it's perhaps fear and the fact that their narrative of victimhood is far more crafted and appeals to the liberal woke left mentality than Hindus and Jews. So does the street veto that Khalistanis, Islamists left, does the street veto play a part in how the global left Islamist conglomerate comes together to demonize the actual victims?
No, I think you hit it there. Like, the street veto is a real thing. They mobilize better, and but also they get more attention when they do mobilize. Like, again, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of Canadians protesting against gender ideology as we speak. I mean, there's going to be massive crowds, and we're going to ignore it, right? But it's a confluence of, yes, the street veto, but who does it work on? Like, I have a friend who's a very famous comedian, and, he did a funny impersonation of the mayor of Toronto, and he was getting canceled by different people because, some venues canceled him, right? But, it's like, because they're woke, and then they got a few emails from people saying, oh, it's inappropriate and all this. But when they canceled him, like, all his fans were like, okay, now I'm boycotting this venue again. So it's like, what video are they listening to? They got way more anger canceling a funny, famous comedian, Ben Bankus, you can look him up, than they did, do that. So it's yes, there's a street veto because they're active, but also they do have the ear of the media. Like, it's a confluence of both of the things we've talked about. Is they have the street veto, but they also have the people in the positions of power where they will listen to the veto, or they will, take it to the next level, put it on TV. Is that? Do you want to get to, I started to rush you. Do you want to get to the audience chat questions? Because I gotta burst right at
absolutely
at 11.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that we have is, Terry Milewski mentioned there are no laws against glorification of terrorists in Canada, unlike in the UK where you can be jailed for terrorist sympathizing. Can conservatives fill this gap?
They could. I would be vociferously against this. And it's not because I don't want to take a hard stance on terrorism. I kind of made a career taking a harder stance on terrorism than most. It's more, I don't trust the Canadian government to define what a terrorist is. If Justin Trudeau was in power right now and promotion of terrorism was a crime, it's like, what is it defined as? Like, a lot of the protesters today could be facing terrorism charges. The truckers could be facing terrorism charges because they could say, being anti-vax is against science and promoting genocide. Therefore, so it's more on who defines this, and I just don't have any trust in the institutions to actively carry out this law. And a lot of it, when it comes to foreign policy and issues like this, I will say, it's not so much about the laws on the books. I say this all the time when it comes to like talking to Iranian people and the Iran issue on this. Because that's a big thing, trying to sanction Iran. And the same thing works here too. The problem is not the laws on the books. We need stronger laws on the books to sanction Iran. The problem is the will to enforce these sanctions from the Biden administration and Trudeau. So if you had a Canadian Prime Minister, US President, who wants to go hard on Iran, they will. If you have a Canadian Prime Minister who wants to crack down on Khalistani extremism in Canada, he can do it with what's the laws on the book. It's about political will from the leadership and not so much about the laws on the books. So, hypothetically, if I become Prime Minister tomorrow, I can take on the Khalistanis because I don't want them here. This frustrates me. It's destroying the fabric of society. Get it out of here. I'll find a way with laws already on the books to do it. If I'm Justin Trudeau and I like taking money, or if you have no will to do it, if you want to ignore the Khalistanis or benefit off of them, then it doesn't matter what laws are in the books. It's not getting done anyway. So for me, when it comes to situations like this, the number one thing is the political will to do something. And I think that's, you want to get stuff done. That's why it's more public advocacy, explaining what you want. It actually, I think, can be more productive at driving government opinion than just trying to get some new laws passed and walk away, because those laws can always be twisted and they can always be used against you, right? What if we rule that Modi is a terrorist because he's Islamophobic and there were riots in India a couple decades ago, and so now all of you guys are terrorists for listening to me, hate speech, all the things. So it's more, I understand what you're saying, it makes sense, but you have to understand that Canada is a very silly place, and bad things can happen when you. So I just try and think of the externalities of what could go wrong in this country.
Everything, apparently, with a prime minister like that. The next question: what will be the effect of these childish allegations of Trudeau on immigration policy of Canada for Indians, if it is to be?
I mean, this is such an interesting question. Because there's so much dark money and fraud in our immigration system running through who knows what and who knows where, and exploiting of. There've been stories in India. You're coming over for India to this promise of better life in Canada. Spoiler alert, that means you're doing Uber Eats and riding a bicycle in Toronto. If you have an engineering degree and you have an actual engineering job coming here, I mean, you'll probably make more money in the States. Yeah, you're doing that. But if you're just coming over to student visa to a Western education and find a better life, you're probably going to be better off in New Delhi than you are in Canada, because you're going to do Uber Eats. And listen, if you want to, Canada is a country where you can do that and you can hustle and you can start a company, you can drop ship, and yeah, you can become a millionaire here. I'm not saying it's that, but we are selling for false good, and I expect Indians to pay a little bit more attention to what goes on in Canada, and I do think this will reduce the number of people flowing in, or maybe it will increase the number of Khalistanis flowing in. Who knows? This is so hard to. It's so interesting because there's the legal immigration, there's the illegal immigration, there's the dark money, so it's an entire cluster F bomb. And my answer on how does it affect immigration, let's wait and see. I can't give you
but also the safety of Indians already living in America, in Canada, and Indians already studying in Canada. I think what Trudeau has done could potentially put them at risk as well. In fact, the Indian government has issued an advisory to Indians and to students saying that they need to be careful of state-sponsored hate against Indians.
I mean, that's a bit of a shot across the bow. I think Indians are mostly safe in Canada. I do think it's more dangerous for an Indian to be in Canada than a Canadian to be in India, maybe, because they attack on it. Listen, this is Canada. It should a travel warning to be jerks to India. That made no sense. When our real problem is China and Iran, that's who kidnaps our people. India put a travel warning back on Canada. You're perfectly safe to go to Canada. What are you going to do? Catch communism and die of fentanyl overdose? That's the danger of going to Canada. You're going to go to Vancouver, see a bunch of dirty hippies on government funded opium, and then be like, "What's this?" And then fentanyl. That's the danger of Canada. So if you go to Canada, just don't do fentanyl in a back alley or at a government fentanyl clinic, right? Other than that, you're probably fine. So Canada's a safe country. India's a safe country. This fight is purely just a political gaffe by an absolute ding-dong whose dad was another ding-dong whose grandfather owned an oil company. So you're safe. We're safe. It's just the leader of our country is the worst.
A ding-dong.
And this is just the fallout we're dealing with.
All right, I have a question. If Americans can kill Osama on Pakistani soil, why is it such a big deal, even if we assume the Indian government had a hand in killing Nijjar? There are videos and photos in the open against. I mean, I think
I
he
think
meant that
you're
there are
talking about
photos
the
and
him with
video.
the gun.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting conversation, right? This is what I kind of brought up with the when I was talking about motive and opportunity. So from a pure Canadian perspective, right? So let's say we're having a behind the scenes chat as like Canadian politics 101, and this isn't on the internet. I would say, listen, this is a matter of national sovereignty, and like Nijjar was a Canadian. Should he have been a Canadian? Probably not. But 2015, we have a duty in Canada to say that we're a safe country, and we can't have. It's a matter of strength. Like you can't have clandestine assassinations in your country. Now it hurts. Pakistan. No one took Pakistan seriously, and the reason the Americans didn't tell Pakistan about Osama bin Laden and the raid there is because they had good intel that a lot of the Pakistani ISI was friendly to bin Laden and would have warned him. So that's why Pakistan get a warning, right? Canada should get the respect in this hypothetical situation of, an extradition request, going through the thing, working with Canadian officials behind the scenes. Now, how friendly would they have been? Who knows? But I'm saying from the pure Canadian perspective, we kind of have to protect their interests and show strength that like we're a sovereign nation. This can't happen here. But then there's like the internal conversation you have to have of like, how the hell did we let this guy in? Like, how the hell did we let this guy in? Like, we should have let this guy in. We should have seen the Interpol warrant. We should have shot him down. He shouldn't have been a massive community leader. Like this is a massive failure on the Canadian side. So, when you talk about a non-Canadian side, and let's say we're all Americans right now, right? We're Americans going, okay, this guy, he got killed by the Indian government. Who cares? Like, again, this isn't, as I said, this isn't little Priya, 11-year-old beautiful girl twirling around in a Khalistan dress who gets shot and then dies, and the whole world's like, no, not Priya, the princess of Khalistan. This is a guy on the internet firing AK-47s talking about ethnic separatist violence. So, again, how are we going to get the world to care about this guy? We're not. No one in the world is going to care about him. But there are things from Canadian, like the opposition had to back Trudeau in these things, and we have to go and say it's this. And I listen. Occam's razor. It's probably gang violence. I hope it's gang violence that diffuses the situation the most. I'm kind of holding out hope that Justin Trudeau will just wake up from whatever binge he's in, be in a better mood and be like, sorry guys, I was using gendered language. I didn't mean India did this. It means India didn't do this. Whoopsie doodles. And then we all just go back.
Could it be fentanyl? Could it be the legalized? Could it be a legalized drug overdose, perhaps?
Probably not the fentanyl. The fentanyl's too. I wish Justin Trudeau was on fentanyl. If he was just whacking fentanyl all day, he couldn't be ruining our relationship with India. The problem is he's not doing enough fentanyl. I want all the leaders. I want every politician on fentanyl right now. Then they can't mess anything up. Things can't get any worse if literally everyone's on fentanyl. This is the state.
So what we need to do. So what we need is
every government to
Trudeau. Okay. So what we need is Trudeau doing more drugs, not less.
More drugs, harder drugs, more frequently, more vacations to surf in Vancouver, more trips to Africa to talk about nothing, more not being in Canada. He needs to be whacked out of his mind, out of the country, not doing his job, and that's the best job he can do.
Can you not send him to India, please? We are done. We are done with the Punjabi dancing.
It's like
he does it really badly.
You're on the list, okay? Pakistan will get him, and then you get him, and then he goes to Bangladesh, and then he gets to dance around in Indonesia, and then he goes to China, then he comes back to India and dances around again, okay?
I think Indians had a convention, and we decided that we don't want him here.
We'll trade. Who's the silliest person in Congress right now? Who's the silliest, is it Rahul Gandhi or whatever?
Yes.
Okay, we'll trade. I'll trade you Rahul Gandhi for Justin Trudeau, and I'll throw in a first-round draft pick. And
only if you take some of our journalists along with Rahul Gandhi.
Okay, no draft picks, but some of the journalists, my boy Rajdeep.
Some of the liberal Islamist journalists, you can have them along with Rahul Gandhi, and we can deal with one Justin Trudeau. How does that sound?
Deal.
Deal?
Done. You got fleeced.
Maybe you can just drug Trudeau and lock him up.
No takesies.
But my last question. All right, my last question, and I know you have to go, you have another interview to get to. My last question to you is Trudeau is painfully and mind numbingly woke. Um, you literally want to just rip your arm off and throw it at him every time he talks about gender politics, and every time he talks about gendered language, and he makes these little comments here and there in a speech where he'll say they them instead of him her, etc. So do you think this collective global retardation when it comes to woke politics is also one of the reasons why leaders who subscribe to woke politics are making such terrible decisions and putting it's not it stops being funny when there are actual lives being put at stake and put at risk, because here there are Hindus who risk targeted killings because Justin Trudeau is supporting terrorists. He's allying with Jagmeet Singh, he's allying with Khalistanis, and he's harboring terrorists. You're right. This Khalistani terrorist who's been killed should have never been given Canadian citizenship in 2015. And that is something that Trudeau should be answering instead of asking questions to India. And all of that is sort of acceptable to the global media and to the global woke community because he likes to talk about gender language, and he likes to talk about you know bathrooms for those who like to identify as penguins or whatever. So do you think woke politics and the global retardation is also something that affects bad decisions taken by these woke leaders, including Trudeau?
Yeah. I think this is a mind virus. This is some sort of intellectual fungus that is a spore that has got into people's brains and driving insane decision making. Again, the complete loss of moral clarity on these issues is another thing. And yeah, but people don't like it. You're right. He gets cover from the global media because he goes along with all these things. But when it comes to actual real foreign policy and real, like when rubber hits the road, Justin Trudeau's alienated himself. He's never popular G20. All these other globalist leaders don't like him because they might, also push some stuff. But at the end of the day, they're there to do deals and they got a country to run. But Canada doesn't provide anything of value anymore. Like under Stephen Harper, the previous prime minister, he went on stage in 2014, like when Putin was on stage, just first Crimean invasion, and said, "I'll shake your hand, but you have to get out of Crimea." Said that to the entire world, and then stood up to Putin, like pretty good moral clarity. Stood up to the Islamic Republic of Iran, uplifted moderate, minority sects of Islam. Never visited the Khalistanis. Made huge inroads in the Sikh community. Stephen Harper made huge inroads in the Sikh community without getting into the Khalistani thing. There's a lot of Sikh support in the Conservative Party from non-Khalistanis from Stephen Harper, who did such a good job. But you have this infectious mind virus where it's forcing everyone to look at oppressor and oppressed and do all these different things that if you truly believe and it manifests and this is your decision making, you end up starting a geopolitical fight with one of your allies with 1 billion people in a situation that you couldn't possibly win because you're going to hide the evidence from the Americans that they were part of a clandestine assassination. It's so insane. That's what I'm saying. You can't, if you try and understand this man, you're going to go insane.
Well, maybe we don't have to. You are giving him to us, and we are giving you an entire group of people we want to get rid of, and we can't take that deal back. My last question is, in the near future, whenever elections are held in Canada, do you suspect a government change? Do you suspect that Canada would get rid of Trudeau and we would see a change in
Trudeau
power?
is underwater. He's 15 points behind the Conservatives. They're getting blown out in the polls. His popularity is declining rapidly. So is Jagmeet Singh's. This is sort of you can say this may be a desperate ploy by a dying animal, like in Justin Trudeau's political career. The next election is 2025. He's got a minority government cobbled together with Jagmeet Singh. They're both doing this.
It's your phone.
So sorry.
That's okay. I'm guessing it's a TV channel's
Yeah,
current
yeah. I
next
got
interview.
a 15 thing. Okay, so I got to run. They're mad at me.
Right.
Um,
But thank you so much for talking to us, Daniel. It's been an exceptionally enlightening and fun conversation.
I
And I'm not
really
known
appreciate
to be a fun journalist. I'm not known to be a fun journalist. I'm known to document the end of Hindus, documenting our end. I'm known to document crimes and terrorism. But this has been one of the most fun conversations I've ever had. Thank you so much, Daniel. I hope we can talk in the future as well.
Yep. Thanks. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Support independent media. Me, you. Canada, silly. Good night.
All right. Thank you. Good night.